Pues bienvenidos todos a nuestra primera hora NEA del 2021. Un año que promete muchas emociones, un año que todos esperamos sea mejor que el 2020. La hora NEA tendrá un nuevo formato. Como podrán ustedes haber notado, estamos iniciando a las de la noche y así será hasta nuevo aviso. Tendremos una sola hora NEA al mes, excepto en el mes de enero, perspectivas económicas, otra hora NEA hacia la tercera semana de enero. De igual manera, tenemos un nuevo formato para la reunión mensual, donde tendremos mayor enfoque en entrevistar a nuestros miembros y estamos inaugurando ahí un espacio los días sábados, uno al mes, para temas culturales. Esto es parte de toda esta reforma y toda esta innovación que estamos integrando a nuestros procesos de convocatoria NEA. Hoy tenemos un ponente extraordinario con quien llevaremos a cabo una entrevista y una entrevista en el mejor momento que podría ser. Ya tenemos el tema en uno, se va a dirigir Rodrigo Llanos, nuestro presidente de la Red de Negocios entre Amigos, y se llevará a cabo en inglés para que vayamos switchando ahí nuestra mente al lenguaje. Y para ello quiero pedirle a nuestro buen amigo Taide Aburto, él es CEO de la US Business Association, haga la presentación de nuestro distinguido invitado. Taide, dejo contigo el micrófono. Muchas gracias por estar con nosotros.
Muchísimas gracias, Jesús.
No te escuchamos.
No te podemos oír, Taide.
Muy bajito, pero sí te escuchamos muy bajito.
No se escucha.
¿No? Yo creo que debe ser mi...
Ahí sí te escuchamos. Ahí perfecto.
Ahí sí te oímos. Ahora sí.
Bueno, ojalá y que no pierda la señal, que ahorita ando fuera de San Diego. Bueno, quiero presentar a Javier, quiero presentarles a Javier Palomares. Tuve la oportunidad de conocer a Javier hace más de 10 años. Pasó de ser mi líder a mi mentor y ahora ya miembro de la familia. Luis y yo tenemos bastante aprecio por Javier. Le llamo mi Big Brother aquí en Estados Unidos y ha sido definitivamente una persona que me ha ayudado bastante a crecer y a desarrollarme en este país. Es un líder con una carrera muy exitosa en Corporate America, fue como comenzó su carrera, y después lo aventaron al ruedo al USACC cuando la organización estaba en bancarrota. Se hizo cargo de la organización y la llevó a crecer para hacerla una de las cámaras de comercio más influyentes en el país, generando millones de dólares en revenue, decenas de patrocinadores corporativos, y fue como comenzó Javier a lograr unirnos a varios líderes hispanos a nivel nacional. Tiene Javier un resumen muy largo y me gustaría, antes de que Rodrigo haga las preguntas que tenemos programadas para el día de hoy, presentarles un pequeño video de 2 minutos para que vean un poquito de con quién se anda cruzando Javier a nivel nacional, tanto políticos como empresarios. Y como les comento, sin lugar a dudas, es uno de los líderes hispanos más influyentes en Estados Unidos. Ha estado 3 años ahorita pescando y corriendo, quién sabe cuántas millas corres a la semana, Javier, pero quisiera aventarse unas carreritas con él. Yo le Pero sí, ha estado ahorita en la banca por 3 años y varios líderes a nivel nacional lo hemos estado no presionando, pero invitando a que regrese a la escena nacional por todo lo que representa para nuestra comunidad y ojalá que pronto lo podamos sacar del sabático, del año sabático que ya lleva 3 años en el que está, porque nos hace falta. Pero bueno, aquí miren, si me permiten, no sé si Rodrigo aquí me va a dar acceso para presentar.
Ya estás como presentador, Taide.
Ok, perfecto. Entonces, ¿están viendo mi pantalla?
No, no le estamos viendo ahora.
Ok, ahorita le doy share.
Ahora sí.
Perfecto. Pues miren, aquí los dejo con este video. No hay mucho audio, entonces es más por las imágenes en caso que no escuchen muy bien el volumen, pero a ver, aquí se los presento, ¿ok?
So, want to congratulate Javier PALOMARES for all the great work that he has done. Must be recognized as one of the most instrumental tools of growth of our great country. The power, the courage, the entrepreneurial spirit, the lives of our Hispanic population. Every time I think about the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, I think about the people and their stories. People like Javier, who was born into a family of immigrant farm workers and, of course, has grown up to be the president and CEO of this institution, this organization. We are honored the largest Hispanic Business Association right here in Houston, Texas. I mean this sincerely, is that you reach back. You reach back. So many people become so successful, but you never forget. You never forget you reach back.
Javier, I applaud you for acknowledging the power of America's businesswomen and the crucial role they play in ensuring the health of our nation's economy.
Y pues bueno, ahí están en pequeño resumen de lo exitosa que ha sido la carrera de Javier en todo este tiempo. Y pues bueno, Rodrigo, te paso el micrófono y dejamos que comience la presentación.
Perfecto, muchas gracias. Bueno, pues antes que nada, Javier, te agradecemos muchísimo que que te tomes el tiempo. We appreciate a lot that you take the time to participate in this first meeting of our net that is called NEA, Negocios Entre Amigos. We are starting the year with this first interview. And first of all, it's your career in politics is impressive. Which is your political profile? Do you lean to the Democrats or the Republicans?
Bueno, primeramente te agradezco mucho, Rodrigo. Un gusto conocerlos a todos. I'm honored to be talking to all of you. I understand that we're talking to people from Argentina, Mexico City, San Diego, and other points throughout the globe. So I'm very appreciative to have the opportunity to talk to you, primeramente. Secondly, I didn't know that I was the first meeting of 2021, so I hope that I set the tone for the rest of 2021.
Sure.
Y la tercera cosa, no soy político, así es que confundas, pero no insultes, por favor. No soy político.
Okay.
Mi rol era, yo era el presidente de una asociación de negocios, de negociantes hispanos en los Estados Unidos. Y en ese tema, en ese trabajo, tuve la oportunidad de trabajar con presidentes, vicepresidentes, expresidentes, embajadores, de todo, porque a nosotros, inclusive a Taide y varios otros, aquí en los Estados Unidos, no nos han dado el reconocimiento que se merece, porque los empresarios hispanos en los Estados Unidos es una cosa muy importante. Y lo que estamos haciendo para la economía americana y el resto del mundo, aquí en los Estados Unidos no se han dado cuenta los americanos. So we believed that our 4.4 million members had to have a voice. And so we came together and decided we are the ones driving economic development. We're the ones paying taxes. We're the ones creating jobs. But we are not Goldman Sachs, or we are not Bank of America. We don't have lobbying teams. All we are is small individual business owners. But if we come together and we speak with one voice collectively, then America won't have a choice but to listen to us, because our economic contribution, when you combine us all, was over $740 billion to the American economy every single year. Pero los Estados Unidos, cuando ellos piensan de un comerciante hispano, they think, he owns a couple of Mexican restaurants, or he owns a muffler shop, or he owns un taller chiquitito. Y no se dan cuenta que cuando estamos juntos, and we collaborate and coordinate and support each other, we can speak with one voice, and that voice is extremely loud. And that was the difference between the way we did it when I was there and the way it's been done for the last 20 or 30 years. And so I'm very happy to be speaking to you guys. I'm honored to be part of the discussion, and I'm a little bit pressured now, finding out that I'm the very first one and I'm kicking off 2021. So I hope it goes well.
Yeah, we're sure it'll be great. We thank you for setting the tone for this year in our conferences. And well, one question. We know that African Americans, Asian Americans, and many other groups of minorities in the US have come together, as you say, and they have formed very powerful organizations that they really wield a very strong political power. But then Latin Americans, we are not so strong in that area.
No.
Why would you think that Latin Americans are behind the other minorities in their coming together for political purposes?
I think it's a variety of things. La comunidad hispana, we are the first ones to fight with each other, amongst each other. And so we have this Mexican crab mentality that the minute one of us starts to rise, the rest of us jump on top of him and pull him down. And it's unfortunate. If you look at the African American community, they represent about 12% of the American population. Hispanics represent 20% of the American population. We number something around 60 million, and they number something around 40 or 45 million. And so if you consider that Hispanics have been in America before America was America, we've been here for hundreds of years before the first African Americans arrived. But we have not done a good enough job of coalescing and working together to speak about our community and to insist that our community be treated fairly. The state of California, right now, for the first time in the 173-year history of the state of California, which is a majority Hispanic state. 42% of the population in California son Latinos. 37% are Caucasian whites, and only 6% are black. But for the first time in the history of the state of California, just now, they finally elected a Hispanic senator. Imagínate. If that was the case anywhere else, people would be outraged. But that doesn't happen with our community because we don't speak up. Y quizás podrá ser que nuestra cultura, no estoy seguro. It may be that culturally we just believe that we will work hard and we will pray harder and God will take care of it. But God's not coming to rescue us on this one. We have to speak up. He's given us the opportunity. He's put us in the country where we can have a voice, and we have to take it upon ourselves and say, ya basta. We are a growing community in this country. You need us because of our purchasing power. You need us economically. You certainly need us to vote for you. And if we don't begin to take on that role and defend not only the Latinos in the United States, but Latinos all over the world. Yo me la paso en varios estados aquí en los Estados Unidos hablando de la importante relación que tiene que existir entre México y los Estados Unidos. Many Americans, most Americans do not know that Mexico is either the #1 or #2 or #3 trade partner to 40 of the American states. Obviously, when people think about trade between Mexico and the United States, immediatamente they think, Texas, Arizona, California, but they never think about Nebraska and Idaho and Ohio and Iowa. They never think about that. They never think about Connecticut and Maine. But the reality of it is, we're the #1 trade partner to Iowa. We're the #2 trade partner to Nebraska. Mexico's the #2 trade partner to various of those Midland states, because all of that grain, all of that sorghum, all of that corn is going to Mexico. And a lot of the machinery that they use to harvest the corn and the grain and the sorghum is coming from Mexico. But the average American has no concept that that is the case. Right now, Mexico is the #1 trade partner to the United States. Mexico just surpassed China. We are now, I think it's $614 billion in trade between the United States and Mexico. Canada is 612, and China is 558 billion. So the average American has no idea of the important commercial and economic relationship that has to exist between Mexico and the United States.
Yes, that is absolutely true. I happen to represent in Mexico the National Association of State Auditors, Controllers, and Treasurers, and I've been doing that for more than 15 years. And I've been in more than 30 states in the US, and I know people from every state. And it's very sad to see how little they know of the importance of Mexico as a trading partner for them.
Absolutely.
And well, but then what can we do about it? I see the point of Tai de Aburto when he was calling you out of your sabbatic year, because we need people like you in the US for the Hispanic community. So what would you think it would be a good path for Americans to know or to at least realize the importance of the Latin American countries, and especially the importance of Mexico as a trading partner?
I tend to look at things more from an economic perspective. I'm a businessman by trade and training. And so I look at the economic relationships, porque mi mamá siempre decía que con dinero baila el perro. And if you understand the importance of the commerce and the trade and the money that is being traded bilaterally between these two countries, it puts everything in a different perspective. I think the first thing that Latinos here in the United States need to do is evangelize and talk about that important relationship that must exist.
Yes.
Another thing that
I'm sorry, please.
Perdón.
Come on. No, go ahead, please.
No, por favor.
Please go ahead.
I think another thing that Latinos need to do here es una cosa muy distinta en los Estados Unidos, porque aquí en México la mayoría de la población son mexicanos. En los Estados Unidos vas a hallar mexicanos, dominicanos, puertorriqueños, cubanos, un poco de todo. Aún que los mexicanos son casi el 80% de la población de los hispanos en los Estados Unidos. But with that said, everybody brings their own version and their own view. We haven't been able to coalesce and with one voice address this issue. And so I think that it is important, like the African American community, to have the spokespeople that are constantly reminding the United States of the importance of this relationship. We're not asking for a handout. We never ask for a handout. We're asking for a fair and equitable opportunity. That's all we're asking for. Es una cosa muy distinta. And so I believe that there needs to be, like there is in the African American community. When you think about the African American community, you have Oprah Winfrey as a spokesperson. Now you have Barack Obama. You even have Michelle Obama. You have, LeBron James. And the list goes on and on and on. And now you have Kamala Harris. So it is important that we begin to create our own spokespeople and sending them out there to deliver the message that, look, we're here to work. We're here to grow our economies. We're here to grow our families. We're here to contribute. Aquí llegamos para trabajar, cabrón. Ponme a trabajar. And so I think that's the message that needs to be delivered. And it doesn't matter if you're Cuban, Puerto Rican, or Mexican. We all have that in common. Esa cosa, todo lo tenemos en común. And if we can speak about at least that issue and then begin to educate the average American about the importance of this economic contribution, then I think the world will begin to change.
Yeah, something that might have suppressed the Mexican relationship with the US was the rising of Donald Trump. He actually started his campaign in the Trump Tower in New York, bashing at Mexicans and saying we are rapists, etc., etc. So that offended deeply Mexicans. I think that not only here in the country, but also the Mexicans, the Mexican Americans that live in the US. And since then, all his racism has worked against Mexicans and against all minorities, blacks, Asians, etc., etc. This has been terrible. You see, what has happened with this guy in the presidency. Well, first in his campaign, and then in the presidency, has been terrible for the relationship. I think that before him, it was very clear that the NAFTA, you see, the North American partners, Canada, the US, and Mexico, were building together as an entrepreneurial and engineering and energy power for the world. But then came Trump, and instead of understanding that China has been the problem with the losing of jobs in the US, etc., etc., he blamed on Mexico. And you know how good is he for lying, and how good all his supporters believe what he says. You see, he has been for the last 2 months saying that he won the election, that he lost by every mean, and but there's 71 million people believes on whatever he says. But I think that he disrupted the North American alliance for production, and then it took him about 2 or 3 years to realize that the problem was China. You see, but that disrupted the alliance, and I think that his participation in politics for the last 5.5 years have been terrible for the Mexican, for the North American alliance. What do you think about that?
I completely agree. I should say that I met with Donald Trump before he ran, right there in the tower at his request. And at the time, I was interviewing all of the, esa época was 2000, for the 2016 race. I was interviewing for 90 minutes all of the individuals who were running for the presidency. So Hillary came to talk to me in front of the cameras. Martin O'Malley came to talk to me. Ted Cruz came to talk to me. Bernie Sanders came to talk to me. And our association hosted all of them, and we asked them fair questions about the economy and trade and taxes and obviously American small business and Hispanic community. And they were fairly, straightforward questions. And he was running. And in fact, he was garnering more attention than all of the other candidates. And so he insisted that he should be on the program. So I went to see him like I did everyone else. And I sat with him like I sat with Hillary, like I sat with John Kasich, like I sat with everyone else. And I said, here are the rules, here are the, and he asked, what are the questions? I said, I can't share that with you now, but it's not going to be anything completely out of the ordinary. I may throw you a curveball or two, but you're a big boy. And he got very upset, wanted to know the questions. I said, that's not going to happen. Other than that, it was a very cordial meeting. I told him that I completely disagreed with his views about Mexico. I asked him if he'd ever been to Mexico. I asked him if he understood the important trade relationship that existed between the two countries. Never mind national security. I mean, unless you're a freaking idiot, you don't understand how important it is that a partner across literally, a river has got your back. And if you don't believe that's important, go to Israel and ask Israel what it feels like to have your neighbor wanting to kill you or not looking out for you. And we forget that as Americans. Most threats that come to the US are going to come either through Mexico or they're going to come through Canada, just like the bombers in 9/11 did from Canada. And so if you have a partner right next to you who doesn't care and isn't looking out for you from a national security standpoint, that's crazy. But I'm not a national security expert. I was there to talk to him about economics and commerce. And so we had that discussion. Obviously, we disagreed as gentlemen. I left. He agreed to come to the Q&A sessions that we were holding. And 48 hours before he was to appear, he backed out. And he was the only one who never showed up. And then, he won the presidency, and, pues, como que tienes que colaborar, no? I mean, he's now the president, and when he won, it was the appropriate thing for me to say, look, I was against this man. I fought strongly against him, but the American people have voted. The American Electoral College has decided this is the president. He's now the 45th president of the United States. It's my duty as an American to try to support him. Well, that lasted about a month before he completely upset everybody in my association. And we basically said, ¿sabes qué? Estás loco. We cannot work with you. And so the relationship was tenuous, to say the least. But it is important, though, and I've said this several times, it is important to note that here in America, it's certainly us Democrats, we believe that Donald Trump won the White House because he spoke to ignorant Americans. And I believe that he won the White House because he spoke to ignored Americans. Es una cosa muy distinta, ignorado y ignorante. Son cosas muy distintas. And in America, everybody assumed, well, he's just talking to ignorant Americans. But if you added up all the ignorant Americans, all the racists, all the Nazis, and put them together, they would not equate to 5 million people. And yet this man got 73 million votes. So obviously he was talking to someone else that was not ignorant, that was educated, but that for whatever reason saw something in Donald Trump that they believed might be better for America than everything we'd seen before. I think it's crazy, but that's what they saw. And I know this because many of my friends who are not ignorant, who are very educated businessmen, who are not racists, actually voted for Donald Trump. Al fin, I think they regretted it in the long run, but they believed at the beginning that, yeah, he's a little crazy, he's not as polished, he's not a politician, he's just talking his truth. And so they believed it's time to give someone a chance, and they gave him the chance. Little did they know that he would wreak havoc with international trade, with international relationship, with our economy, with, you know, communities all over this country. The man was a disaster, in my opinion, But it is important to recognize that simply because somebody has a different political ideology, he is not any less American than I am. He's as American as I am. He simply happens to have a different view. It's a crazy view, in my opinion, but in America, you have that right. And that's where the difference is how do we figure out now, as a community of Americans, to talk to each other respectfully, disagree respectfully, and never make the mistake that we made in 2016. That's the challenge for the American people. How do we recognize and respect our differences and continue to move forward as what I believe to be the greatest country in the world, or one of the greatest countries in the world? This democracy was nearly destroyed by this man. We came very close to being destroyed by one individual. And
you're not out of the woods yet.
Mándeme.
You are not out of the woods yet.
We are not. We got 9 days to go.
Yes, I'm sorry to say, but you're not out of the woods.
No, we are not. We are not.
The American society is absolutely divided at this time. You have 81 million people voted for Biden, and 74 million people voted for Trump. There was a 7 million difference, which is a lot, but according to the Electoral College, well, then it was 307 versus 232 votes, electoral votes. But then let's talk about the Hispanic population.
And Rodrigo, Rodrigo, if I might, if I could just interject one thought. Yes. The scary part for me as a Latino in the United States, y me da mucho orgullo ser mexicano. Mi mamá era de México, mi papá era de México, llegaron aquí de inmigrantes, no teníamos educación. Aquí, trabajamos muy duro para llegar donde estamos ahorita. Y aunque no es tanto, pero no tengo ni un clavo, pero, aquí estamos. And so to me, it's a very important thing, and I'm very proud of it. Así me hizo Dios. Yo soy mexicano, aunque soy americano. Pero la sorpresa para mí y lo que me da mucho miedo, in 2016, 30% of the Hispanics who voted for Donald Trump. And after 2016, I thought, that'll teach you, you learned your lesson. Well, no, in 2020, 38% of the Hispanics who voted for Donald Trump. That is a very scary thing to me. What is it in our community that people believe that they can overlook the insults, the ignorance, the apathy, the anarchy, the hate,
racism,
and the racism, that they can overlook that and still vote to make this man the leader of our country? That's what's scary to me. Esa es una cosa que no le puedo entender. No matter how I look at it, I can't make sense of that. And it's something that we, as Americans, as Hispanics, and me as a Democrat, we have to come to grips with that. Because if we don't, it will happen again. I just wanted to say that, Rodrigo.
Yeah, thank you. That was actually going to be my next question, because I was going to ask about how the Hispanic population is supporting Trump. You said 38% of Hispanic population voted for him last year, which is a lot, and almost double of what it was in 2016. So what do you think would be the actions that, let's talk about just the Hispanic population. Mm-hmm. What would be the actions, what would be the path to heal the wounds and bring the positions closer just inside, let's say, the Hispanic population? Let's not talk about the whole of the melting pot of America, just about the Hispanic population. What can we do to bring them together? Because it's just incredible what you said, that 38% of Latinos voted for him last year. It's incredible. It's just
Imagínate. I think
what can be done about it.
And I had this conversation with Hillary in person twice. For a very long time in America, la mayoría de los hispanos éramos demócratas. I mean, it was just assumed that the Hispanic community was going to vote Democrat for time immemorial. And in the last decade or so, little by little, some Hispanics have been voting Republican. And then we got the phenomenon of Donald Trump and that blip on the scale, if you will. And I think that part of the reason is that the Democrats took for granted the Hispanic community. When you see American political campaigns, including Joe Biden and certainly including Hillary Clinton, and I spoke to both the campaigns, I spoke to both of them, they spent an inordinate amount of time courting the African-American vote, courting the women's vote, courting the gay and lesbian vote, but they didn't give any attention to the Hispanic vote. And Donald Trump, whether you like it or not, he had what in America we call it a strong ground game. He was talking to Hispanic communities or his surrogates, not him personally, but his people, in places like Brownsville, Texas, San Angelo, Texas, Las Cruces, New Mexico, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Miami, Florida. He was out there, or his people were shaking hands, talking to Latinos all over this country. The Democrats didn't do that. They took it for granted that we would vote for them. And as I told Hillary, I don't know which I hate more. I don't know if I hate Republican Party because they demonize us, or if I hate the Democrats because they take us for granted. I think I'd rather be demonized because at least you're thinking about me. But the Democrats didn't even think about Hispanics. They just assumed, esa gente van a votar por los demócratas. Y mire lo que pasó. So I believe that part of the fix, part of the remedy is for Democrats to take very seriously the Hispanic vote and recognize in America, every 30 seconds, a Latino turns 18 and becomes an eligible voter. That's 60,000 Hispanic, brand new Hispanics every single month. And that will be the case for the next 20 years in this country. So unless you start to think about us and start to figure out what is it that they want, the Democratic Party in America assumed that the most important thing to the Hispanic community in the US was immigration. And it is important, but it was not the most important thing. It ranked number 5. The first most important thing was the economy, then was health, then was education, then was security and national security and terrorism, and number 5 was immigration. But they believed if we only speak about immigration to you, you'll be okay. But here in this country, not unlike in Mexico, we want to grow our businesses. We want to talk about what you're going to do to help me grow my business, to help me sell more, to help me buy more, to grow my wealth, to feed my family, to take care of my family, to educate my children. Those are the things that are the most important. And Democrats never talked to the Hispanic community about that. That was one of the important missing elements. And when no one's talking to you and you're completely ignored, you're willing to listen to a diatribe coming from Donald Trump.
Wow. How sad is that? So let's move on to the current situation in which Donald Trump will be leaving next week, but Trumpism remains.
Mm-hmm.
So the guys that voted for him, the 74 million, etc., are there. And what this represents for the Hispanic population in the U.S. Do you think that Trumpism in the Hispanic population will flourish, or that eventually the Hispanic population will realize that that's not the right way to proceed and move to support the other Republicans, even if I think that that the Republican Party is going to have very deep problems, because some of them will remain Trumpisms, and the other guys will just be simple Republicans. But how do you think that the Hispanic population will fall? More with the, let's say, Republicans, or with the Trumpism?
I think that the issue of Trumpism, I think it goes beyond the Hispanic community. That's an American challenge. I think that all Americans need to be very concerned about what we've seen out of the Trumpism camp, if you will, and certainly in the last 5 or so days, and the assault that we saw on our nation's capital. That's deplorable. That's un-American. That's criminal, and we should pursue anybody who had anything to do with that vehemently and aggressively. When you look at the Hispanic community specifically relative to Trumpism, again, it's important for us to keep our eyes open and be truthful and be aware that there are Latinos in this country that continue to be proud supporters of Donald Trump. Hector Barreto runs a very important organization called the Latino Coalition. He is a very, very smart man. He is very educated and very influential. And he has referred to Donald Trump as the entrepreneur in chief. He is a huge fan of Donald Trump. Steve Cortez is a very well-regarded, very well-known journalist and political contributor. He is a very strong supporter of Donald Trump. And the list goes on of prominent Latinos that continue to back Donald Trump. I think that in the last 5 days or so, they may have seen something that finally they're beginning to see, that this man is his actions, his behavior is deplorable. It's un-American. It's not fitting the presidency of the United States. I hope that they have seen the light, but I think it would be foolhardy to believe that they're simply going to come over to the other way of thinking. I think there's work yet to be done to convince those Latinos, and a lot of them are religious leaders, that simply because of the issue of abortion decided to go with Donald Trump and forgave everything else. I don't understand how you can profess to be a religious leader and accept, in fact, exalt a man who is a racist, who is anti-feminine. I mean, the man is, in so many ways, he is the antithesis of Christianity. And yet we have many, many, many religious leaders here in the United States that love this man. And that, to me, is an enigma. It's something I can't understand.
Sure. Jesus, would you like to make some of the questions we have in the chat?
Absolutely, yes. Sorry for the delay. I have a question from Jaime Morfin here, which states, let me state it in Spanish. ¿Qué estrategias se pueden esperar de Biden en el proceso de reunificación de los Estados Unidos? ¿Cómo puede acercarse desde el gobierno a los ignorados, que son la base principal de apoyo de Trump?
Yo creo que Donald Trump, no, este hombre no se, he's not going to disappear. He's not going to just mystically go away. He will remain in some form or fashion a voice in American politics, a voice in the American psyche. He will find a way. And so I think in America, it's important for us to recognize this man's not going away, at the end of January. But with that said, I feel very strongly that, as I call him, Uncle Joe, that Joe Biden, I know he understands the Hispanic community. I know for a fact, I have spent time in his kitchen talking to him about my community. I have spent time at his dinner table. I have spent time hosting him at events that I've been putting together. I have spent time with him on the phone. This is a man who understands, first of all, working class Americans. He understands the importance of American small businesses. He understands the importance of labor. He understands the importance of struggle. He understands loss. He understands being disenfranchised. His father was a laborer, and he comes from a background that, while it's not Hispanic, there's a lot of parallels, because he had to work for everything he got, and he saw his father sacrifice to push him ahead. And that is the American Hispanic story. We were pushed ahead by our parents, and our job is to push our children ahead. Nobody gave the average Latino in America anything. We had to earn it. And in that regard, we are very much like Joe Biden, unlike Donald Trump, who had everything handed to him. So Biden understands that. He also has a long history of collaborating with, supporting, and working with the Hispanic community. There was a president of Colombia, Uribe, Álvaro Uribe, and I had the opportunity to have dinner with him, and I was so impressed with this man. One of the most educated, humble individuals I had ever met, and he was prolific. And he started talking to me one time about something called Plan Colombia. And in short, what it was America helping Colombia remanufacture its agricultural sector, to do other things other than poppy, because poppy eventually became cocaine, and cocaine eventually ended up coming to the United States. And he came all over the US talking to senators and congressmen, trying to convince them that if America works with me, I can figure out ways to redirect the energy and the crops and the agriculture of my country if we can find markets for flowers and you name it, other crops. And there was one senator who was willing to listen to him, and that senator was from Delaware, and his name was Joseph Biden. And it was Joe Biden who collaborated with President Álvaro Uribe, who was a Harvard graduated and Harvard educated man, but went back to Colombia, and together they hatched Plan Colombia. And many people, many Americans have no concept, they have no idea that Joe Biden has a history of working with the Hispanic community, including working with me. And Taida has been there at the table when I'm having conversations with Uncle Joe. And so I believe there's a big difference between the way Joe Biden looks at Hispanics in this country and Hispanics all over the world, and the way Donald Trump looks at Hispanics in this country and all over the world. Biden understands struggle. He understands hustle. He understands dedication. He understands sacrifice. And in understanding that, in a nutshell, he understands the Hispanic community.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, it's basically related to what you just said, Mr. Biden. How do you expect the relation between Mexico and the U.S. under his mandate?
Well, one thing that Joe Biden brings to the game is that when it comes to international relations, of all of the people who were running, and there were 22 or something Democrats running for the presidency, if you'll recall, of all of them, the one who truly had a track record and truly had experience in international relations and foreign relations was Joe Biden. And he brings that to the job. He also brings to the job the opportunity to work across the aisle and bring Republicans to his side of thinking, his side of an issue. If you've seen Joe Biden work the room, it's amazing. The man knows what he's doing. As they say, he knows where the bodies are buried. He's been around for a long, long time in Washington, D.C. And some people complain about that. They say, if you've been around for 43 years, maybe that's not such a good thing. I think that's a great thing. At a time when you need experience, you need maturity, and you need somebody who's willing to listen respectfully to all of our partners, and certainly to partners as close as Mexico.
And in your opinion, can Joe Biden reunite the U.S.?
Well, I think that Joe Biden will be an important player in that reunification. but it's going to take many of us working together to get that done. He can set the tone, and I believe he will. I believe he's already begun to set the tone. But it's unfair, I think, for us to put it all on Joe Biden's back. I think that we as Americans, and certainly we as Latinos in this country, need to come together, reconcile our differences, agree to disagree, and do so respectfully, and look at what's best for America and how we move forward as one nation, one people. Joe Biden, though, will be the quarterback. He will be the captain of that movement. And I believe earnestly that he is the right voice. I'm reminded of a text that I sent a friend of mine some time ago. It must have been perhaps March, when the debates were going on and the world was watching Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren and Julian Castro and the list goes on, Bernie Sanders, and they were debating on a variety of things. And Joe, maybe wasn't the best debater on the stage. And at one time, he was ranked like number 8. Harris was above him in rankings, in ratings, in popularity. The polls showed Elizabeth Warren as number 1, Bernie number 2, Buttigieg as number 4, Harris as number 5, and the list went on. And down at number 8 was this old horse named Joe Biden. And nobody believed that he could get it done. And I believed then, as I do now, that Joe Biden was the right man for the job. He is the right man for the job. And of all the people, and many of them are friends of mine, Cory Booker, I love Cory Booker, Amy Klobuchar, the list goes on, Julian Castro, many of them are friends of mine. But I believed then, and I believe now, that for this time, for where we find ourselves today, the best choice on that stage was Joe Biden. And I think history has proven that. And here we are. He is going to be the president, the 46th president of the United States.
From our friend Oscar Becerril, what key actions, in your opinion, can be taken to have a stronger relation between Mexican community in U.S. with Mexico, between U.S. and Mexico?
I think Latinos in this country, we need to be the ones that champion the cause of Mexico here. It's our responsibility to speak of the motherland and speak of our parientes, our familiares, nuestros amigos en Mexico. It is right. It is our accountability. It's our responsibility. If you are British and you live in America, you brag about England and the United Kingdom. If you're French and you live in America, you're constantly talking about how wonderful France is. If you're Canadian, but in the US, we don't spend enough time as Latinos and certainly as Mexicanos talking about the important relationship. Again, it goes beyond just the commercial and economic interests. Even national security implications are part of this relationship. There's a proud history that goes back hundreds of years of partnership and mutual respect between Mexico and the United States. And that's the way it should be with your neighbor. Your neighbors should be your friends. It should be a relationship of mutual respect, of mutual gain. And we as Hispanics in this country have a responsibility to constantly remind our country of that important relationship.
Okay, on that same direction, our friend Enrique Ugarte is asking you, what is your viewpoint on the direct and political Biden-López Obrador relationship?
Well,
that's a must.
You saw that coming.
I think both leaders, I believe both leaders will begin from a position of mutual respect. I believe both leaders will act mutually in good faith. obviously there are differences that exist between both countries, and that's natural, and I think it's healthy. Pero no hay, what we cannot accept es una falta de respeto. We must have that. And I know Joe Biden has that respect. I believe that AMLO does as well. If nothing else, they're both astute enough politicians because they've been around long enough to understand that you get further collaborating with each other than you do combating each other. There will be differences. I think that the views, particularly in specific areas, are diametrically opposed, but that there will be mutual respect and an earnest effort to try to bridge the gap and find the areas of collaboration. I think that exists, and I look forward to seeing them work together.
Thank you, Javier. Well, I have a couple.
Creo que ya el tiempo nos gana. Si quieres hacer el cierre, mi buen Rodrigo.
Sí, we have a couple more questions. One would be that regarding the Republican Party, once Trump is gone from the presidency, he will be around, as you said, sure. I think that there's many lawsuits that he will have to face, and maybe he will end up in jail. We don't know that, but I'm sure that the lawsuits will rain on him after he leaves office. Mm-hmm. But then the Republican Party, do you think that it will move to the extreme right or to the center after Trump?
I think actually it's going to be a little bit of both. There's going to be a fragmentation, albeit a smaller piece, but much louder, that will continue to drift to the right. I believe that will happen. But the bulk of the Republican Party, I think, will come back and be a bit more centrist, particularly in an environment where they have a Joe Biden that is willing to work with them and collaborate. And I think Latinos are going to have an important role in that reconciliation. I mean, think about it. Joe Biden has appointed Javier Becerra from California as the Secretary of Health and Human Services, a member of the cabinet. There is nothing more important to the Hispanic community than the health of our children. And what better than to have a Latino at the helm at the most important post when it comes to the health and well-being of the American people. Javier Becerra was appointed by Joe Biden. Alejandro Mayorkas, Homeland Security. That was one of the top issues that Latinos saw. Here again, a Latino has been appointed by Joe Biden. Education, which is probably the most important thing for the Latino community, and it's crucial in order for us to move forward. We must educate our children. And here again, Miguel Cardona was appointed by Joe Biden. 3 cabinet secretaries, full-level secretaries reporting directly to the President of the United States in charge of issues that are absolutely critical for the continued success of our society. And then within his office, the people that you will never see, but they're the ones who are walking behind him and whispering in his ear who he's about to meet, what happened, why he's taking this meeting, who he should talk to, when he should talk. You've got Cristobal Alex de Texas, Mexicano. You've got Emi Ruiz, Tejana también, Mexicana. And you've got Adrián Sáenz, Mexicano y de Texas también. Me da mucho orgullo, obviamente, porque soy mexicano y soy de Texas. But these 3 people in a team of 10, 3 of them are Latinos. And those are the ones that handle every single thing that Joe Biden sees. Everything that hits his desk is going to be touched by one of these individuals. And how wonderful that finally Latinos are in a position, Hispanos specifically in a position, to advise the President of the United States on issues that are critically important. I think Latinos will have a large role to play, larger than they have ever had under any president that I know of in the history of this country.
Wow, those are great news for Mexico and the Latino community in the US. Well, just one last question. What do you think about Kamala Harris? Would she be a good vice president? Is she very committed to the extreme left? in the Democratic Party. What would be her role in this presidency?
I have to be honest, entre familia, she has, no la conozco, o no la conozco suficiente bien. So I'll start there. But if I look at her voting record and the types of legislation that she supported, she literally is more liberal than Bernie Sanders. Yeah. If you look at the voting record, yes, she voted absolutely in a more liberal way than Bernie Sanders himself. So that's a cause for concern for a businessman. Secondly, yes, when it comes to issues like oil and gas, which is critically important between Mexico and the United States, we have oil independence finally in this country from Middle Eastern sources because of Mexico. If it wasn't for Mexico, we would still be calling on Middle Eastern sources, not knowing if they're the ones bombing us or not, but we'd be buying their oil at premium prices. But because of the collaboration that exists in Campeche and the Gulf of Mexico, all over the down on this side of the border, in the Permian Basin, down into Mexico, down in all over. If it wasn't for that collaboration, we might not have that oil independence from the Middle Eastern sources. Kamala Harris has been vehemently against oil and gas exploration. That is troublesome for somebody who works in that environment. And as a Texan, where a very large proportion of our tax dollars, of our funding, of our gross domestic product that comes from Texas is tied in some form or fashion directly to drilling and oil, or indirectly to drilling and oil. That is somebody who, frankly, I'm concerned. I'm hoping that in the next 4 years, she will begin to understand the important role that some of these industries must play for the continued well-being of the American people, and how pervasive oil and gas really is to this country. It's easy to rail against an industry like oil and gas, but forget that you drove your car to the office or you flew a plane to that next meeting. And that's, I think, part of the, I'm hoping, the maturity and the centering of somebody who, frankly, has got a voting record that's very concerning to a businessman like me.
Thank you so much, Javier. This has been a very illustrative meeting. We have learned a lot from you about what is happening in the US in these very troubling times. And we hope that people like you and Taide Aburto and others are able to bring together the Hispanic community and improve their relationship with Mexico. So now I will ask all our participants, todos los socios de la red de negocios entre amigos, les pido por favor prender sus cámaras y sus micrófonos para darle una despedida a Javier como él se la merece. Así que muchísimas gracias, Javier.
Y si me permites, Rodrigo, por favor, qué cosa tan linda ver gente tan importante colaborando uno con el otro. Me da mucho orgullo, and how appropriate that you call your association negocio entre amigos, because that's the way that it should be. Esa es la forma mexicana. Me da mucho orgullo. Te doy las gracias a ti, Rodrigo. Taide, obviamente, brother, thank you for introducing me to this wonderful group. Y a todos los que están aquí, les agradezco mucho. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Y eres bienvenido a nuestra asociación cuando quieras.
A usted, gracias. Thank you. Thank you. Buenas noches.
Gracias. Muchas gracias. Buenas noches.
A ustedes.
Me da mucho gusto verlos, y el próximo miércoles tenemos nuestra junta mensual. Les vamos a enviar antes un newsletter con todo lo de el housekeeping que ya conocen para no hacerla larga, y va a ser una junta en la que va a haber 3 participantes. Vamos a tener, uno de ellos va a ser el que ganó el premio NEA al emprendimiento a finales de diciembre, y tenemos 2 colaboraciones de nuestros mismos socios, así que va a ser una reunión muy interesante de 1 hora el próximo miércoles a las 7. Espero nuevamente verlos a todos. Me da muchísimo gusto saludarlos. Que tengan un muy buen año 2021 y nos estaremos viendo pronto. Muy buenas noches a todos y gracias, Javier.
Gracias.
Aide,
Chao.
Armando.
Gracias.
Buenas noches.
Qué gusto verlos.
Igual.
Gracias, Javier. Gracias a todos.
Diego, todos, qué gusto.
Todos nos vemos.
Hasta luego.
Hasta luego, feliz año.
Gracias igualmente, JJ, Enrique, Diego.
Gracias, Rodrigo. Saludos a
Gracias igualmente.